Philosophers wrote of a land greater than Egypt and richer than any empire. Was it true or not?
Survivors claimed they saw lights under the water, as if Atlantis was pulled below. Was it nature's fury or another world into the sea?
Long ago in Athens, a philosopher sat before his students and spoke of a world that no man could see, yet one that seemed to breathe through his words. His name was Plato. History remembers him as a thinker, a teacher, a seeker of truth. But what most forget is that hidden in his writings lies the first and most haunting record of a lost world, a world that men and women across centuries have hunted like a ghost. Atlantis. Plato did not whisper this land as a dream. He spoke of it with weight, with detail, with the calmness of someone repeating what had been told, not inventing it. Greater than Egypt, richer than any empire, and older than Greece itself, Atlantis was described as a mighty island kingdom, its people powerful, its cities glittering with wealth, its reach stretching beyond imagination. His words were not vague poetry. They were precise. He gave rulers names. He described their temples, their weapons, their walls, their canals. He even set the stage with coordinates, as if he were guiding future eyes to a map. The students listened, perhaps in awe, perhaps in disbelief. For how could such a kingdom fall into silence, leaving no trace, no ruin, no bones of kings? And yet, Plato insisted, Atlantis, he said, was swallowed by the sea in a single day and night of sorrow. That line is echoed through centuries like the toll of a bell. Scholars debate if it was allegory, a lesson about pride and punishment. Others whisper that it was no lesson at all, but veiled confession of hidden knowledge, something whispered to Plato by priests of Egypt, or passed down from travelers whose memories still burned with a vision of a drowned world. The dialogues Timaeus and Critias are the only windows we have into this mystery, and those dialogues are strange. For when a man creates myth, he paints with wide strokes, but Plato used a sharper brush. He spoke of concentric rings of water and land, of canals cut by human hands, of temples plated with silver and gold, of statues towering toward the sky. His description has the precision of a traveler's account, not the blur of a poet's imagination. Too exact, too deliberate to be dismissed. Some have said he invented the tale to shame Athens, comparing the pride of Atlantis to the humility of Greece. Yet even as that theory grows, so does unease. If it were only a parable, why describe the weapons of fortresses, the harbors? Why write as if drawing from memory, as if placing a lantern over the map of the world? The suspicion grows deeper when one notices how Plato frames the story. He does not claim it as invention. He insists it came from Solon, the great lawgiver of Athens, who himself heard from priests in Egypt. The Egyptians, he said, spoke of a land that ruled far across the seas, a land so mighty that even the Mediterranean trembled before it. Solon carried that memory home, and Plato carried it further into the future. But here lies the unsettling thought. What if Plato was not hinting at a lesson? What if he was handing down directions? For in his writings there is a rhythm, a structure, as if each description is placed with purpose, coordinates without numbers, a map written in words. Think of it. A philosopher, one of the greatest minds in history, leaving behind not only teachings of justice and politics, but a breadcrumb trail pointing toward a vanished world. Could it be that hidden in plain sight is a guide, a secret map dressed as dialogue? Now imagine the students of Plato, leaning closer as the tale unfolds. Their teacher speaks of a land so fertile that its fields yielded harvest twice in season. He tells of elephants walking its plains, of ships docking in harbors wide enough to swallow fleets. He describes walls plated in metals that gleamed under the sun, reflecting fire into the sea. He tells of kings who ruled not one city but many, their navy so vast it could drown coastlines with sails. But he does not stop at glory. He tells of corruption. He says the people of Atlantis, once noble, grew greedy, arrogant, and hungry for power. And it was in that hunger that the doom of Atlantis was sealed. A story like this might have drifted into myth, like so many other tales of gods and heroes. Yet Plato anchors it with detail after detail. He speaks of Poseidon as a protector of the island, of temples carved in his honor, of a city built in rings around a central hill. He writes the exact width of those rings, the number of gates, the bridges that span the waters. He even marks how the Atlanteans organized their army, how they trained their soldiers, how they launched war against Athens itself. Why such detail? Why such precision? If a child were told the story, the child might imagine a fairy tale. If an elder heard it, they might call it wisdom disguised as myth. If a man or woman listened closely, they might wonder if the philosopher was hiding truth inside his teaching, shielding knowledge behind a veiled allegory. And across the ages, that suspicion has lingered. Explorers in the age of discovery carried Plato's words like a compass. Kings financed voyages, hoping the lost island might yield gold and secrets. Even in modern times, submarines and satellites search the oceans, guided, though they may not admit it, by the faint echo of Plato's map. What is most haunting is not what Plato revealed, but what he left unsaid. His dialogue Critias breaks off abruptly, unfinished, as if the hand that wrote it faltered, as if someone did not want the full tale to be told. A silence lingers at the edge of the record, like a shadow beyond the candle's glow. What was cut away? What detail might have placed Atlantis upon the earth with certainty? Perhaps that missing end was never lost, but hidden. Perhaps knowledge of Atlantis was always meant to be half seen, enough to tantalize, never enough to confirm. Like a secret map folded in a library, its lines fading but never vanishing. As centuries passed, some dismissed it as fable, yet others heard a challenge, a whisper daring them to follow the trail. Treasure hunters, scholars, mystics, adventurers, all believed they could trace the steps back to the sunken world, and each clung to one truth. Plato had given more than a story. He had given a puzzle. Every temple described, every measurement recorded, every name carved in the dialogues. These were the pieces of that puzzle, and the picture it painted was too rich, too vivid, too heavy with detail to die as mere allegory. Now, picture the philosopher himself, a man of calm reason, of debate, of careful thought. Would such a man waste his words on fantasy? Or did he choose his words with the care of someone encoding knowledge, planting seeds that only the curious, the daring, and the restless will pursue? Perhaps he believed that Atlantis was not meant for his own time, but for another age. Perhaps he wrote so that in centuries yet unborn, others would search, and in their searching remember. That is why his map still lives, not drawn in ink upon parchment, but carved in the memory of humanity. Every explorer who sets sail into the unknown, every scholar who digs into the ruins of forgotten lands, every child who dreams a city glittering under the waves, they all trace their steps back to Plato's secret map. But this map does not point with clarity. It tempts, it lures, it frustrates. For every clue it gives, it hides another. For every description, it leaves a silence. The mystery survives because the tale is not closed. It is an open door, and once you look inside, you can never unsee it. If Plato spoke truth, then somewhere beyond the horizon lies a graveyard of kings, a palace beneath the tides, a city that once ruled the world. And if that is true, one question burns brighter than all others. If Plato's story was true, where did Atlantis sink? The world remembers Atlantis for its fall, but before the sea rose and silence covered its name, there was an age so bright that even memory trembles to speak of it. The golden age of Atlantis. In that time, the island kingdom stood like a jewel upon the ocean, so vast that its shores touched the horizons, so rich that even the soil seemed to bleed treasure. Fields stretched across plains where harvest came twice each year. Rivers shimmered with clear water, their banks heavy with fruit, their depths alive with fish so abundant that nets returned full without effort. Elephants roamed freely across the land, creatures of strength that gave the Atlanteans both awe and pride. But the true wonder of Atlantis was not its fields nor its beasts, but the city at its heart, rising from the center like a vision from another world. The capital shone in the sun with walls plated in metals unknown to most men. Silver and bronze gleamed from its gates, while towers caught the light like fire. Some whispered that crystals capped those towers, glowing at night like stars fall into the earth. The city was built in circles, rings of water, and land woven together by bridges and canals. Ships drifted across those waters, as easily as one might walk a street. The canals were so precise, so vast, that men who saw them swore they had been carved not by hands, but by titans. In the center stood the hill of Poseidon's temple, a place said to hold treasures beyond counting. Gold roofed the shrine, ivory decorated its walls, and at its heart stood a statue of the god himself, driving 6 winged horses, his figure so great it seemed alive. The Atlanteans were masters of stone and metal, of craft and measure. They built palaces where floors gleamed with precious stones, fountains where water danced with light, baths that steamed with healing heat drawn from the earth itself. Their roads stretched across the island like veins of iron. Their harbors could hold 1,000 ships, their walls strong enough to keep out armies. To step into Atlantis was to step into a vision of the future, a place where mankind had leapt ahead of its age. Yet in the shadow of that splendor lay a quiet unease. For some whisper that perfection is never safe. The greater the height, the sharper the fall. And though Atlantis glowed like the crown of the world, the seeds of its own darkness had already been sown. The people believed themselves chosen, favored by Poseidon, given gifts that no other kingdom possessed. They mastered not only the earth, but the air and sea. Tales spoke of energy drawn from crystals, of lights that never burned out, of towers that hummed with hidden power. Their ships, it was said, could move without sails when guided by this force. To outsiders, it seemed like sorcery. To the Atlanteans, it was destiny. But when a people believe they are destined above others, pride grows like a storm. Slowly, whispers of arrogance began to creep into the golden age. Where once kings ruled with justice, now greed began to stain the crown. Where once warriors fought for honor, now they hungered for conquest. The Atlanteans stretched their reach across the seas, demanding tribute from distant lands. Their armies marching not only to defend, but to dominate. Even within the shining city, cracks appeared beneath the glittering surface. The canals that seemed carved by titans needed endless labor to maintain. The crystals that glowed with power stirred questions. Were they gifts of the gods, or dangerous tools mankind was not meant to wield? Scholars argued in hidden chambers. Priests warned of balance broken. Farmers whispered that the earth groaned from being forced to yield beyond its nature. And always, there was the silence of the sea, a silence that felt like watching. For though Atlantis shone above the waves, some swore they felt a presence beneath them. Fishermen spoke of strange lights deep below, moving where no flame should burn. Sailors claimed to hear sounds at night, low rumblings that echoed like the voice of the ocean itself. Yet, such warnings were dismissed. Atlantis was mighty, untouchable, a kingdom above fate. Still, stories passed through the streets. An elder told children that too much perfection draws envy from gods. A servant whispered to her master that utopia is a curse. For men who have everything soon desire what they should not. A soldier, drunk in the tavern, said he dreamed of the city breaking, of water pouring through the rings, of towers crumbling as if struck by wrath. He laughed at his own dream, yet his laughter rang hollow. The golden age carried its own shadow. The brighter the light, the deeper the darkness behind it, and so Atlantis reached further. Its king sought not only dominion over men, but mastery over nature itself. Storms were said to be bent by their rituals, earthquakes quieted by their altars. The very elements seemed tools for their ambition. Whether this was truth or legend, one cannot say. But what is remembered is that they believed themselves equal to gods. That belief grew heavier with each passing season. Pride filled the palaces. Greed touched the temples. Arrogance crowned the throne. A kingdom that once thrived in harmony now carried the weight of hubris. The laughter of the Atlanteans grew sharp. Their towers grew taller. Their hunger stretched wider. And though the fields were still rich, though the crystals still glowed, though the canals still gleamed, the whispers of unease grew louder in the shadows. Perfection is never still. It is always moving, always shifting, always fragile. And when a people believe themselves unbreakable, that is when the cracks form deepest. The golden age of Atlantis was a vision of wonder, a dream that men and women across centuries would ache to see. But beneath that dream, something vast stirred. Something that does not smile on arrogance. Something that waits for the moment when pride reaches too high. For the sea does not forget. The earth does not forgive. And even the gods grow weary of men who think themselves divine. Something vast, something wrathful, was watching their pride. Atlantis did not rise to glory on stone and gold alone. Its secret, whispered only in dark temples and sealed chambers, was power drawn from the earth itself, a force the Atlanteans claimed was given to them by Poseidon, god of the sea. At the center of their city, beneath the temple of gleaming ivory and gold, lay chambers where crystals pulsed with strange light. These crystals were not ornaments, nor simple treasures. They hummed, they vibrated with an energy that seemed alive. The priests spoke of them as gifts from the deep, fragments of the world's own heart, placed in Atlantis when Poseidon first shaped the island from the sea. To the Atlanteans, these crystals were sacred. They were called the breath of Poseidon. Legend said that when touched, they carried warmth like living skin. When placed in towers, they glowed brighter than fire. When aligned in circles, they produced a sound so deep it seemed to echo through the bones. The kings believed this was proof of their divine right. They declared that Atlantis was chosen above all lands, blessed with the very lifeblood of the earth. They built their towers higher, placing crystals at their peaks to shine across the night. They lined their ships with fragments, and some claimed the vessels could sail without oars or wind, guided by the energy alone. But power always brings hunger. What began as worship soon turned to experiment. Scholars in hidden halls bent their minds to unlocking the full strength of the crystals. Could they summon storms? Could they calm the waves? Could they bend the elements to their will? The experiments began in secret. Priests arranged crystals in patterns, chanting words passed down for centuries. At first, the results were small, a flame that burned without fuel, a pool of water that swirled without touch. But then greater wonders came. Clouds gathered when no wind stirred. Rain fell upon fields long dry. The ocean near the capital shifted as if an invisible hand pressed against it. The people marveled. To them, this was proof that Atlantis held the favor of Poseidon. But not all were at ease. For each experiment left behind a weight, a tension in the air, as if the balance of the world itself had been pushed too far. Farmers spoke of strange harvests, crops growing too fast, fruits too large, only to rot before their time. Fishermen returned with nets full of twisted creatures, their eyes pale, their bodies glowing faintly in the dark. The priests who guided the rituals began to notice patterns. Their records, carved in hidden tablets, showed warnings. Some wrote that the crystals sang when disturbed, a deep note that echoed even in silence. Others recorded symbols, spirals, waves, and broken circles. To them it was a language, a message left by Poseidon, warning of the limits of power. Yet the kings ignored these whispers. Power is a dangerous gift, for once tasted, it cannot be set aside. The rulers of Atlantis demanded more. They ordered larger rituals, more crystals aligned, greater forces summoned. Storms were drawn across seas to smash the fleets of rivals. Earthquakes shook distant lands. The Atlanteans began to believe they could command nature itself. But nature is not a servant. Each command seemed to demand a price. After a great storm was summoned, the skies above Atlantis darkened for weeks, rain falling heavy until the streets nearly drowned. When the earth was shaken to break an enemy's walls, the ground beneath Atlantis trembled too, cracking in ways never seen before. Still the kings pressed on. Their pride blinded them. To admit danger was to admit weakness, and Atlantis was never weak. So they called on the priests to expand their work. Towers were built not only as homes for rulers, but as conduits for energy. Crystals larger than men were placed within, arranged in spirals, circles, and lines. It is said the city began to hum, a low sound that never ceased. At night, light bled from the towers into the sky, painting it with shifting colors. The people celebrated, believing themselves as gods. But in the temples, fear grew, for the priests saw what the kings ignored. The symbols repeated themselves. Over and over, the spiral wave appeared in their rituals, in their dreams, even the cracks forming on the walls. The spiral wave, a circle collapsing inward, a motion of water drawn down into nothing. They tried to explain, to warn, but the kings silenced them. One priest who spoke too loudly was found drowned in a pool, though no water was near. Another vanished in the night, his records burned, his chamber sealed. Still, some warnings survived. Fragments hidden on clay tablets, symbols carved in secret beneath altars. They tell of a growing imbalance. They speak of energy drawn too far, stretched too thin, angering the world itself. The priests beg for restraint. But restraint is a chain, and kings do not wear chains willingly. The experiments grew darker. Crystals were forced together until they cracked, releasing flashes of light so fierce that men were blinded. Ships were sunk in moments when storms appeared from clear skies. Some whispered that the Atlanteans even tried to pull land from the sea, raising islands where none had been. Whether they succeeded or failed, no one could be sure. But the earth groaned louder and the sea whispered more fiercely. Children dreamed of waves taller than mountains. Elders swore they felt the ground breathing beneath their feet. Animals fled the hills, restless, uneasy. Yet the kings marched forward, drunk on power, deaf to warning. And always, the spiral wave appeared. On stone, on parchment, in dreams, a single shape repeating, as if the world itself was speaking in symbols. A spiral, a wave, a destruction circling inward. It was a message of Poseidon, a warning that power borrowed from the deep would one day return to the deep, a reminder that no kingdom, no matter how mighty, can bend nature without waking wrath. The priests who saw this truth hid their records, hoping some future age might understand. They could not stop the kings. They could only record, only carve, only pray. Their voices were silenced, but their symbols endured. The Atlanteans did not listen. Their towers shone brighter. Their rituals grew louder. Their pride swelled higher. But beneath the glow, the earth trembled, the sea stirred, and the spiral wave turned ever tighter. One symbol kept repeating, the spiral wave of destruction. Plato's words stand alone. He is the only ancient voice who speaks so clearly of Atlantis. Others mention islands. Others speak of floods. But no one else paints the lost world with such detail. This has haunted scholars for centuries. Why him? Why only him? If Atlantis was only metaphor, a teaching dressed in story, then the answer is simple. Plato invented it. He crafted it as a parable to show the dangers of pride, the collapse of empires, the punishment of arrogance. Many accept this. Many cling to it because it feels safe. But when the veil of safety is pulled aside, darker questions rise. What if he did not invent it? What if the tale was not his creation, but something he inherited? Plato himself explained that the account did not begin with him. He said it came from Solon, the Athenian lawgiver, who heard it from Egyptian priests. They spoke of a land that ruled beyond the seas, a land older than Athens, richer than all, destroyed in one terrible night. Solon recorded this. Plato preserved it. But here the trail begins to blur. Solon's own writings are gone, lost. What survives are only Plato's words. No manuscript of Solon remains to prove or disprove. No scroll, no copy. As if the story itself was meant to vanish and yet linger only in one man's voice. Some say this is coincidence. Ancient works vanish all the time. Fires, wars, the slow decay of papyrus. Time eats history. But others whisper that the vanishing feels too sharp, too selective. For if Atlantis was false, why do so many fragments of truth circle around it? Why do ruins across the world echo the designs Plato described? Why do myths from distant lands mirror the flood he recorded? It is almost as if a hand reached through history, erasing what should not be remembered, leaving behind only one fragile account. There are stories of missing scrolls, libraries that burned at strange moments, scribes who copied texts but skipped entire passages. In Egypt, in Mesopotamia, in Greece, fragments surface of civilizations lost, cataclysms hidden. And yet, when one looks at the name Atlantis outside of Plato, silence fills the page. The silence itself feels deliberate. Some scholars argue that Plato's tale was not suppressed, but simply ignored, dismissed by his peers. Yet in whispers there are darker tales, that those who dug too deep into the story vanished, their works destroyed, their names erased. A thread of paranoia winds through the centuries. Think of the Library of Alexandria. Fire consumed it, yes, but what knowledge died in those flames? Could Solon's words have lain there, lost in smoke? Could priests have hidden their records deep in temples, only for conquerors to tear them apart? Perhaps. But perhaps the erasures were sharper than accident. Perhaps someone wanted mankind blind to a truth too dangerous to hold. The thought chills the mind, for it means Atlantis was not only destroyed once in the waves, but destroyed again in memory. A double death, one by nature and one by silence. Even in modern times, fragments surface. A manuscript here, a coded reference there, a Greek historian quoting Plato but cutting off before Atlantis is explained, a Roman scribe hinting that stories existed but refusing to repeat them, a medieval monk writing of a land across the sea, then crossing out his own words. Over and over, gaps remain, as if knowledge was not lost by chance but cut out like diseased flesh. Why? Who would erase Atlantis? One answer lies in fear. If Atlantis had truly mastered powers beyond comprehension, crystals that bent storms, rituals that stirred the earth, then perhaps priests and rulers feared mankind would seek to repeat those mistakes. Perhaps silence was mercy. Perhaps forgetting was protection. But another answer feels darker. What if Atlantis was not a warning but a secret? A secret that someone wanted to keep for themselves. Power hidden beneath the sea, knowledge waiting to be found. And only a few would be allowed to hold it. Plato may have broken that silence. He may have spoken what others would not. His dialogues read like confession, fragments written in plain sight, but disguised as philosophy. He knew that stories pass where secrets cannot. Wrap a truth in allegory, and it may survive the flames. But even he did not finish. His account of Atlantis ends abruptly. Critias cuts off in mid-breath. Why? Was it his hand that faltered? Or was his silence forced? Some wonder if he feared. Others believe the missing end was removed, destroyed, stolen. If it contained directions, maps, details too sharp, then perhaps someone ensured it would not pass the world. Think of it as a detective would. The evidence is not only in what exists, but in what does not. Why is there no other detailed account? Why are the fragments scattered, incomplete, always pointing yet never confirming? Why does the trail always vanish at the edge of certainty? It feels like someone has swept the floor, leaving only faint dust. Psychological unease surrounds this silence. For if knowledge can be erased so completely, then history itself is not safe. What other truths have been cut away? What other worlds have been drowned not in sea, but in silence? The paranoia spreads like a shadow. The thought that at every step, unseen hands shape not only the present, but the memory of the past. Atlantis becomes not only a mystery of a lost world, but a mystery of lost memory. Did Plato defy that silence, or was he used by it? Did he reveal truth, or did he give only enough to haunt mankind forever? The deeper one looks, the stranger the pattern grows. The priests of Egypt, who gave Solon the tale, are remembered as keepers of vast, ancient wisdom. They spoke of floods and kings, of cycles of time where civilizations rise and fall. Did they tell Solon all, or only a fragment? Did they hold back what they feared? Perhaps Atlantis was too great a shadow, too terrible a memory, for them to place fully in the hands of another people. And yet, even fragments are dangerous. Once spoken, once written, a story cannot be killed. It hides in corners. It clings to minds. And so, Atlantis survived, not in scrolls, not in archives, but in whispers, in Plato's strange detail, in the unease that his words carry. This is a conspiracy of silence. Not one man, not one empire, but centuries of hidden erasure, a shadow that stretches from priests to kings, from scribes to conquerors, perhaps even into the modern world, where knowledge still disappears in locked vaults, where records vanish before eyes can see them. What is most unsettling is the pattern. Every time Atlantis rises, it is cut down. Every time it surfaces, it sinks again, as if the world itself conspires to hide it, as if mankind is not meant to remember. But memory is stubborn. Questions remain. Curiosity gnaws. Why Plato? Why his words alone? Was he careless or chosen? Did he preserve what others destroyed? Or did he betray a secret meant to die? The silence holds no answers, only a question that lingers like a shadow across the ages. Who erased Atlantis and why? The end of Atlantis did not come quietly. It came with a roar so deep that the earth itself seemed to cry out. One moment the island stood proud, its towers glistening in the sun, its canals alive with ships. The next, the ground trembled beneath their feet, and the world shifted as if the gods had risen in anger. It began with a rumble. At first, it was only a shiver in the stone, a low growl beneath the city. The people looked to one another, uncertain. Then the tremor grew, shaking the walls, cracking the streets. Statues fell, water spilled from the canals, sloshing as though pulled by unseen hands. The temples shuddered. Great marble columns split. The statue of Poseidon in his chariot groaned, and for a breath it seemed the god himself had turned his gaze upon the city. And then the storms came. Clouds gathered, black and heavy, choking out the light. Wind screamed like 1,000 voices. The sea rose, foaming, crashing against the harbors with fury. Ships that had sailed proudly now snapped like toys, their masts torn away, their hulls splintered in the waves. Lightning cracked across the sky, striking towers, igniting palaces. Flames licked the golden roofs. Smoke billowed into the storm, and the rain came down in sheets so fierce that men could not see their own hands. The city that had once felt eternal now shook like a fragile shell. Bridges crumbled into the water. Gates tore apart. Walls buckled under the strain. Families ran through the streets, clutching children, searching for safety where none could be found. The earth itself joined the assault. Great cracks split the ground, swallowing homes, dragging markets into pits. Whole blocks tilted and fell, their stones grinding as they disappeared into the opening earth. It was as if every element had risen together. Earth, wind, fire, and water, each striking in turn, each adding to the ruin. But amidst the chaos, there was something stranger. Survivors would later swear to what they saw, though their words were often met with disbelief. For as the city began to sink, lights appeared beneath the water, not the glow of fire, nor the flash of lightning. These were steady lights, deep and cold, shimmering in patterns. Some claimed they pulsed like the beating of a heart. Others swore they moved like rivers of fire flowing through the sea. They spoke of colors never seen in flame, blue and green, white and silver, flickering in shapes that seemed alive. The ocean did not only rise, it seemed to pull. The water did not merely drown the streets, it dragged them. Whole structures slid downward as though hands reached from below, grasping, pulling, claiming the city for the deep. Temples toppled, their spires vanishing into the dark waves. Towers cracked and fell, not outward, but downward, as if the foundations themselves were being yanked from under them. The screams of the people were swallowed by the roar of the sea, their voices carried away as the island dissolved into foam. And still the lights burned beneath. Some witnesses claimed they saw shapes within those lights, vast outlines moving in the depths, shadows too large to belong to any creature they knew. It was said that something ancient stirred below, something that had slept until the Atlanteans woke it with their arrogance. The lights were its eyes, its fire, its wrath. The priests who survived said they had seen the signs, the spiral wave carved in their dreams, the hum of the crystals growing louder in the weeks before the end. They warned that Atlantis had torn too deeply at the fabric of the world, and now the world was tearing back. The kings, proud until the last moment, stood in their palaces as the walls crumbled. Some begged Poseidon for mercy, others cursed his name. But the sea did not listen. The sea rose higher, faster, swallowing the rings of the city one by one. First the outer circle fell, its markets and harbors drowned. Then the middle circle, its homes and gardens dragged into the black. At last the inner sanctum, the hill with the temple of Poseidon, shook with thunder and cracked as the waters closed over it. The island vanished, not over centuries, not over decades, but in one single day and one single night. When the storm cleared, nothing remained but waves. No towers, no walls, no cries. The sea stretched empty where once the greatest kingdom of men had stood. Yet whispers lived on. Sailors swore that on quiet nights, when the moon was full and the tide still, strange lights flickered beneath the water. They spoke of ruins glimpsed far below, towers half buried, statues lying broken in the sand. Some swore they heard voices carried on the waves, as if the people of Atlantis were not gone, but trapped beneath, calling out through the water. Others claim survivors did escape. They fled in ships before the final collapse, carrying fragments of their knowledge to distant shores. In Egypt, in the Americas, and the highlands of Europe, legends grew of strangers arriving after a great flood, bringing wisdom, teaching stonework, leaving behind echoes of a forgotten age. But the heart of Atlantis was lost, whether pulled down by nature's fury or by something deeper, something hidden beneath the waves. No one could say. The sea kept its secret, and yet the question endures, sharp as the first day it was asked. Was Atlantis destroyed by the wrath of the earth and sky, or was it claimed by something else? Something that waits still in the dark, its lights flickering like cold fire, its presence pressing just beyond the reach of human eyes? Was it nature's fury, or something far stranger dragging it down? When the waves swallowed Atlantis, it seemed as though the kingdom had been erased forever. The towers were gone, the canals, the palaces, the crystal halls, all dragged beneath the water. Yet stories lingered, and in those stories, faint traces of survivors emerged. The sea may have claimed the island, but not every Atlantean. Some were said to have fled in ships before the final collapse. Others, guided by visions, left long before the storms came. These wanderers carried with them fragments of knowledge, fragments of memory, fragments of a lost world. And wherever they went, the echoes of Atlantis seemed to follow. In Egypt, priests told of strangers who arrived from the sea. They were described as tall, with eyes that shone like distant stars, their skin weathered but their presence commanding. These strangers brought wisdom. They taught the people how to guide the floodwaters of Nile, how to build with stone, how to read the stars for time and season. The Egyptians called them gods, for no other word seemed to fit. But perhaps they were not gods at all. Perhaps they were refugees. Far across the ocean, in the land we now call Mesoamerica, myths also speak of visitors. A white bearded figure, clad in strange garments, arrived from the east. He carried with him knowledge of farming, calendars, and the heavens. He was called Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, a god who promised wisdom and peace. But could he have been more than a myth? Could he have been a survivor, carrying Atlantean memory into a new land? Even in Greece, where Plato first wrote of Atlantis, whispers remain of strangers who taught skills unknown. The idea that mankind did not invent its own wisdom, but received it from those who came before. This idea weaves through the roots of countless myths. And yet, these myths carry the same shape. Tall figures, strangers from the sea, knowledge that arrives too suddenly, too perfectly, as though carried from elsewhere. The same story told in different tongues, across different oceans, separated by distance but bound by memory. It raises a question that does not fade. If Atlantis fell, did its bloodline survive? And if it survived, where did it hide? The thought is unsettling. For if even a handful of Atlanteans lived, their knowledge would have given them power beyond measure. In a world of villages and tribes, they would have seemed like gods. They could shape stone with techniques unknown. They could chart the stars with uncanny accuracy. They could teach farming in ways that transform barren land. With such gifts, they could bend the course of entire civilizations. Perhaps that is why so many cultures remember the coming of teachers, builders, gods. The Atlanteans were never gone. They were simply hidden in plain sight, walking as men but remembered as more. Some scholars point to the monuments left behind. The pyramids of Egypt, rising with impossible precision. The step pyramids of Central America, built with astonishing symmetry. The megaliths of Europe. The stone heads of Easter Island. The temples buried in jungles and deserts. How did early people, with simple tools, raise stones weighing hundreds of tons? How did they align monuments to stars with perfect accuracy? The question is asked again and again. Perhaps the answer lies in survivors. Survivors who carried knowledge across oceans, who whispered secrets of building and time, who left their marks to the hands of those they guided. But if that is true, then another thought creeps closer. If Atlanteans survived, did they keep their knowledge to themselves? Did they pass down their bloodline, teaching their children in secret, hiding their power while shaping history from the shadows? It feels almost like a detective's puzzle. The evidence is scattered, hidden in myths, in ruins, in half-remembered legends. one must follow the threads across continents. In Egypt, Osiris emerges from a flood, bringing law and farming. In South America, Viracocha walks on the waters of Lake Titicaca, teaching humanity before vanishing again. In Greece, the gods walk among men, leaving behind children who carry both human and divine blood. Different names, different lands, but always the same shape. Strangers arrive from the sea after disaster. They bring knowledge to advance the time. They vanish, leaving behind mystery. Was this divine, or was it the shadow of Atlantis? Stretched across the ages, the idea that Atlanteans survived shakes the very ground of history, for it would mean that humanity's greatest monuments, its earliest leaps of progress, may not have been born from our own struggle. They may have been gifts from a drowned world, a world that refused to vanish completely. But if that is true, then we must ask, where are they now? Some believe the bloodline thinned, scattered, lost among countless generations. The Atlanteans blended into humanity, their memory diluted, their gifts forgotten. The knowledge once carried by survivors became myth, and the blood of Atlantis became just another part of the human river. Yet others whisper that the bloodline was preserved, that survivors kept to themselves, guarding their heritage, guarding their knowledge. Some point to secret societies, to hidden brotherhoods that claim descent from ancient kings. Some say that the wisdom of Atlantis is not lost, only hidden, locked away until the time comes when it will be revealed. It is a thought both thrilling and terrifying. For if the bloodline exists, if even now the descendants of Atlantis walk among us, what do they know? What do they carry? Do they still hold the secrets of the crystals, the powers that bent storms and shook the earth? Do they remember the symbols of the spiral wave, the warnings carved by their priests? Do they wait, watching, guiding, shaping history while humanity stumbles forward in ignorance? Perhaps that is why myths never die. They survive because they are not only memory, but hints left for us to find, threads leading back to a truth buried deeper than stone. The survivors may have scattered, but their shadows stretch across all lands. Every culture that tells of gods on the sea, every monument that rises higher than it should, every story of wisdom arriving too soon. All of these may be footprints left by those who escaped the flood. The flood destroyed their island, but it could not destroy their memory. And maybe it did not destroy their blood. If survivors walked among us, did their descendants keep Atlantis alive in secret? The sea hides many things. Beneath its endless waves lie mountains taller than Everest, valleys deeper than the Grand Canyon, trenches that no light has touched since the world began. For centuries, humanity has sailed above, never knowing what slumbers below. But in modern times, machines and submarines have dared to look deeper, and what they found shook even the most rational minds. It began with sound. In the cold waters of the Atlantic Trench, sonar pulses echoed back strange returns. Engineers expected the usual: a jagged line of rock, a slope of mud, a scattering of debris. But what came back was different. The echoes formed patterns, angles too precise to be natural, surfaces so smooth they reflected like steel, lines that stretched too evenly, like walls built by unseen hands. The data was dismissed at first. Machines fail, sonar bends, but then more missions came and the patterns repeated. A hum lingered in the recordings, low and steady, as if the ocean itself vibrated with a hidden pulse. To some ears it was nothing. To others, it sounded like engines still running far below the waves. Whispers spread in quiet circles. Could something human or older than human lie buried beneath the sea? Could ruins still breathe in the dark, their heartbeats carried in sound? Submarines were sent, small, careful, designed for exploration. The first dives reported nothing unusual, just the pressure of the deep, the silence of the abyss. But then the lights of the submersibles struck surfaces that should not exist. Perfect right angles, flat planes of stone or metal, too sharp for natural geology. Stair-like ridges, carvings hidden under layers of silt. The divers could not explain it, and the reports were sealed. Yet divers talk. They whispered that when their light swept the trench, they felt watched. The ocean, already heavy with darkness, seemed to lean closer. The water pressed not only on their bodies, but on their minds. Some described voices, not loud, not clear, but whispers in the current, words in no language they knew. Others swore they felt the pull of something calling them down, deeper, past the limits of their air and their fear. The voices were not recorded on any device. They lived only in the memory of those who heard them. But each diver told the same story. A presence, a call, a promise waiting in the dark. Engineers studied the metallic echoes again. They tried to explain them as trick of rock, as fault of sonar, yet the patterns refused to vanish. They were too consistent, too deliberate. Lines where no line should be. Shapes hidden beneath miles of water. Shapes that matched no mountain, no ridge, no natural design. And then there was the hum. Always the hum. A vibration in recordings, steady, unbroken. As if a machine somewhere deep in the trench had never stopped running. It was faint, almost beyond hearing, but it was there. Some compared it to turbines. Others to the low sound of power feeding through a buried core. It frightened them not because it was loud, but because it was constant, unchanging, patient. If it was only one mission, perhaps it could be ignored, but it was not one. Over decades, reports emerged from different countries, different machines, different crews, always in the same region of the Atlantic. Always the same echoes, the same shapes, the same hum. And still, nothing was announced. The data was locked away, the divers silenced, the findings denied. But silence does not kill curiosity. It only feeds it. Rumors spread of deeper dives, missions that never returned, submarines that descended, reporting structures like roads, like pillars, like gates, before their signals cut out forever. Families were told it was failure, collapse, pressure, but the whispers among the crews told a darker story. They said the sea does not like to be uncovered. Those who heard the whispers, who saw the shapes, often changed. Some grew quiet, withdrawn, as though carrying secrets too heavy to share. Others grew restless, obsessed, sketching spirals and patterns they could not explain. A few never set foot in the ocean again, but there were some who longed to return, who felt the call like a song they could not resist. They believed the voices. They believed something waited for them. The thought itself is chilling, for if the machines beneath the waves are real, if they hum and pulse after thousands of years, then Atlantis may not be a dead city. It may be sleeping, preserved under the weight of the ocean, waiting with patience that only stone and machine can know. The trench may not hold ruins. It may hold systems, engines, devices that once powered a kingdom and now lie hidden, humming still in the deep. If that is true, then the lights the survivors of Atlantis saw may not have been illusion. The glow that dragged their city downward may still burn. Perhaps it was not the sea that took Atlantis, but its own machines. Perhaps the crystals, the engines, the power they drew from Poseidon's gift, did not die with the flood. Perhaps they sank alive, carrying the city into the dark, sealing it there, still pulsing, still waiting. What unnerves the mind most is the thought that the hum is not random. Machines do not hum for no reason. They hum when they run. They hum when they wait. They hum when they are ready. Divers tell hearing it in their bones, not only their ears, a sound that settles into the skull, that makes sleep uneasy. Some say it was not only sound but intention, as if the hum was not a noise but a message, not words but presence. Something vast, something aware. The sea holds silence. But in that trench, silence is broken. There the sea hums. The questions grow. Did Atlantis fall, or was it taken below to continue in secret? Did its machines bury themselves, waiting until mankind returned to awaken them? Or are they not waiting at all, but watching, pulling minds closer, whispering through currents, luring divers deeper until they vanish in dark? The ocean is old, older than man, older than cities, older than the memory of gods. If Atlantis sleeps beneath it, then humanity has never truly ruled the earth. For beneath our feet, beneath our waves, something greater may wait. The sea isn't empty. Something waits below. Whispers of Atlantis never truly faded. They survived in myths, in ruins, in fragments of Plato's words. But in the modern world, There are those who believe more than stories remain. In shadows, hidden from the public eye, a society has grown around one single obsession: the crown of Atlantis. Legends say the Atlantean crown was no ordinary diadem of gold and jewels. It was forged with crystal energy, the same power that pulsed in the towers and temples of the lost city. The kings of Atlantis wore it not just as a symbol of rule, but as a weapon, a key to control storms, to command the sea, to draw upon forces that ordinary men could not understand. When Atlantis sank, the crown was believed to have gone with it, but some insist it survived. This secret society calls it the sunken crown. To them, it is the ultimate prize, not treasure for wealth, but an artifact capable of shaping the destiny of nations. They believe it lies hidden under the ocean or sealed away in archives no one dares open. And for centuries, they have searched in silence, leaving behind only fragments of their trail. Strange records appear in forgotten libraries, ships that never returned from expeditions, journals cut short in mid-sentence, whistleblowers who tried to speak, only to vanish without trace. Each piece adds to the puzzle. Each piece suggests a hand guiding events from behind the curtain. Some of the earliest clues come from the Renaissance, when maps were drawn with lands that did not exist, islands painted in the Atlantic with uncanny accuracy. Scholars who pressed too hard into these maps were ridiculed, then erased from record. But letters survive in private collections. Letters describing a brotherhood of men who sought something more than gold across the sea. They spoke of relics. They spoke of crown. In modern times, the trail grows sharper. Expeditions set out under false names. Ships charting courses to points where Plato's coordinates seem to lead. Some return with silence, reporting nothing unusual. But others never returned at all. Their signals cut out, their final coordinates aligning too neatly with the stories of Atlantis. Those who studied the lost ships noticed patterns. Cargo records altered, crew lists incomplete, insurance claims filed too quickly, as though the losses were expected, even planned. Then there are the whispers of divers who came back changed, men who refused to speak of what they saw, men who tore pages from their own logs before they could be read. Some vanished weeks later. Others were found lifeless, with symbols carved into their belongings. The spiral wave, the mark of destruction that haunted Atlantis itself. The society behind these shadows is said to call themselves the Keepers of the Crown. They operate across borders, their members hidden in universities, corporations, even governments. They pass fragments of knowledge between them like coded prayers, always circling the same belief, that the crown still exists, that whoever finds it will not only hold the power of Atlantis, but command the future of mankind. Detectives who stumbled on their traces spoke of files sealed without reason, archives locked to even the highest requests. They found coordinates written in the margins of old books, numbers matching sonar scans of unusual shapes in the ocean floor. They uncovered testimonies of sailors who swore their compasses spun wildly when near those waters. But each detective's trail ends the same way, with silence. Their names fade, their investigations cut short. Some resign suddenly, some disappear. A few are said to have been found far from home. Their deaths explained by accident, though nothing in the report seemed natural. And still the search continues. In secret labs, scientists are said to study crystals dredged from the deep, fragments that hum faintly with energy no modern device can explain. In hidden vaults, maps are guarded that trace lines across the Atlantic, converging on points where the sea grows too deep for ordinary vessels. The keepers watch, and they wait, certain that the crown lies within reach. What unnerves most is the scale of their patience. This is no hunt for gold. This is no reckless treasure chase. It is a design carried across centuries, fed by power, wealth, and silence. They believe the crown is destiny, and they will sacrifice anything to claim it. The stories of vanished expeditions grow darker when linked to them. A ship in the 1930s, crewed by explorers seeking ruins off the Azores, vanished without signal. Survivors from another ship swore they saw lights rise from the water before the vessel disappeared. The case was closed as storm loss, but the files were sealed under a mark used only for matters of national secrecy. In the 1970s, divers investigating anomalies in the Bermuda region returned with tales of humming stones, of walls half buried in sand. They tried to speak, but their interviews were never released. Within months, their research group dissolved. The official record said funding ran out. Unofficial whispers say men in black coats collected every scrap of data. Even today, reports surface of ships veering off course, of private expeditions ending in silence. Their last known locations match too closely with the coordinates found in Plato's dialogues. It is as though the ocean itself swallows them, or someone ensures their voices never rise. The crown remains hidden, but the belief in it grows. To the keepers, it is not only an artifact, but a weapon. They say the crown controls crystal energy, amplifies it, focuses it. In the hands of a ruler, it could command storms, shift seas, bend the earth itself. In the hands of society, it could control nations, dictate the future, silence the world. And if this belief is true, then the stakes are beyond measure. Whoever finds a crown may not only uncover Atlantis, but awaken its power. A power that once brought a kingdom to ruin. A power that could, if unleashed again, shake the balance of the modern world. The deeper one looks, the more chilling the puzzle becomes. For the crown lies hidden under the waves. Why have so many vanished when nearing it? Why do ships disappear? Divers lose their lives. Records vanish in the sealed archives. Is the ocean guarding it? Or is the cult ensuring that no one outside their circle comes close? Perhaps the greatest fear is not that the crown is lost. The greatest fear is that it has already been found. That somewhere in silence, it rests in the hands of those who keep it secret, testing its power, waiting for the right moment to use it. Whoever finds a crown controls the future of mankind. The story of Atlantis has always been told as an ending, a city punished, a kingdom drowned, a warning carved into time. But what if it was never an ending? What if the fall of Atlantis was only a change to shift from one form to another? What if the city was never destroyed, but only hidden asleep beneath the sea, waiting? In recent years, deep-sea sensors have captured something strange. Machines designed to measure pressure, and currents picked up rhythms that should not exist. At first, they were dismissed as errors. Faulty instruments misread signals. But as more data came, the pattern repeated. Not random, not chaotic, but steady, pulses like a heartbeat. It was faint, buried beneath miles of water and stone. But it was there, a rhythm that rose and fell with uncanny precision. Too regular for nature, too alive for chance. The scientists who studied it grew uneasy. They could explain earthquakes, volcanic activity, shifting plates. But not this. This was different. This was order. Something below was not only moving, it was beating, as if alive. The thought spread quietly through those who dared to examine it. Could it be machinery? A system left behind, still functioning, still breathing? Or something stranger? Something like a city, not dead, but asleep, its pulse carried through the sea? The speculation grew darker when other anomalies surfaced. Recordings of deep-sea microphones captured sounds too low for the human ear. But when amplified, they resembled tones like chanting, or perhaps the vibration of massive structures shifting in rhythm. Divers who descended into those depths reported unease that went beyond fear of the dark. They described the sense of being inside something vast, as though the trench itself was not ocean, but architecture. One diver swore he saw light flicker across a wall too flat to be rock, a glow that faded before his eyes could confirm it. Another claimed his instruments lost power near the site, drained as if by an unseen field. These were dismissed as delusions, symptoms of stress, but the reports kept coming. The question could no longer be ignored. What if Atlantis had not died? What if the city, with all its crystal power, had sealed itself in the abyss? What if the crown, the towers, the machines were not ruins at all, but systems still alive, still functioning, still waiting beneath the waves? The idea shifted the tale from tragedy to suspense. For if Atlantis sleeps, then it may not be memory. It may be future. Picture it. A city encased in stone and sea, not broken, not rotted, but preserved. The crystals humming faintly. The engines turning slowly. The walls holding against pressure no man could endure. Perhaps the Atlanteans themselves built it this way, retreating from destruction into a deeper refuge. Or perhaps the sea itself entombed them, but could not kill what was bound by forces older than man. If Atlantis still pulses, then the heartbeat is not only a sound, it is intention, a rhythm that carries purpose, like the body of a sleeper, still alive, still dreaming. What does a city dream of? Does it remember? Does it calculate? Does it wait? Some theorists whisper that the machines were designed not only to power Atlantis, but to preserve it, that the crystals were not destroyed by the flood, but fed by it, drawing energy from the endless motion of the sea. The longer it sleeps, the stronger it becomes. And if this is true, then every pulse detected is more than an echo. It is a countdown. The thought is unbearable, for it means Atlantis was not punished, not ended, but hidden until the world above forgets. Hidden until mankind grows blind with pride again. Hidden until the deep opens and the city awakens not as a ruin, but as something reborn. The patterns in the data hint at cycles, pulses that grow stronger every few years, as though the heartbeat is quickening, as though whatever lies below is stirring, testing its strength, preparing to rise. And yet, the most haunting detail is not the data, not the hum, not the heartbeat. It is the silence that follows every discovery. Files vanish. Reports are buried. Scientists who speak out find their work discredited, their funding cut, their voices drowned in doubt. But the whispers remain. The pulse remains. The fear remains. Could Atlantis be more than history? Could it be present? Could it be future? The survivors spoke of lights under the water, pulling the city down. Perhaps those lights never died. Perhaps they were not destruction, but transformation. The city was drawn beneath the sea not to vanish, but to change. To enter a sleep that has lasted longer than empires, longer than memory. A sleep that is not endless. And if that is true, then the world above is not safe. For what wakes in the deep may not return as it once was. It may not be a city of marble and gold, but something else. Something shaped by centuries of silence, by power feeding in darkness, by dreams no man can know. The sea hides more than bones. It hides intentions. It hides patience. What if Atlantis isn't lost, only waiting to rise again? Atlantis has always lived in two worlds. One in the past, where philosophers and priests spoke of its rise and fall. The other in imagination, where dreamers and seekers continue to search for its shadow. Yet the truth remains suspended between these two realms, forever just out of reach. Every map of the ancient world carries gaps, places marked only with waves and uncertainty. Every myth of floods and gods echoes the same story told in different tongues. And every sonar scan of the deep returns with anomalies, angles too sharp, hums too steady, shadows that should not exist. Each clue is incomplete on its own, but together, they form a pattern too strong to ignore. Atlantis is forbidden. No proof places it firmly in history, yet no argument can erase it. It hovers at the edge of certainty, and proven but unavoidable. To speak of it is to enter a labyrinth where history, science, and myth twist into one. Perhaps this is the power of Atlantis, not to stand as ruins in the sand, but to haunt the human mind, to remind us that there is always something hidden, always something waiting beneath the surface of what we believe we know. It is less a place and more a mirror, showing us our ambition, our arrogance, our hunger, and our fear. Plato may have written of a kingdom destroyed by pride. But what if his words were not about the past at all? What if he wrote a warning, not a memory? His dialogues might not be a record of what was, but a prophecy of what will be. Civilizations rise, blinded by their own brilliance. They build towers, command nature, master machines. They grow too fast, stretch too far, believe themselves untouchable. And then they fall. Atlantis may not be one city, but a cycle, a destiny that repeats. A pattern written into the fate of mankind. When one listens closely, it feels less like a tale of forgotten island and more like a reflection of our own age. A world growing powerful, restless, certain of its control over nature. A world that whispers with the same pride that doomed Atlantis. Perhaps Plato's story survives not because it happened, but because it always happens. Each generation builds its Atlantis. Each generation risks its fall. The name changes, but the fate remains. And yet, there is unease in believing it ended forever. Deep-sea recordings hint at rhythms like a heartbeat. Divers tell of voices in the currents. Lights flicker beneath the waves, steady, deliberate, alive. What if the city did not die? What if it sleeps beneath the ocean, not broken, but patient? What if it dreams, calculating, waiting for the moment to return? The ocean keeps its secrets well, but it does not erase them. One day, the waves may part, and when they do, we may find that the lost world was never lost at all. Atlantis remains an eternal question. Was it memory, myth, or prophecy? Is it gone, or is it still waiting? The answer may be closer than we dare imagine. If this journey through the mystery of Atlantis left you with wonder, share it with those who love secrets, legends, and hidden truths. Subscribe if you wish to hear more stories of lost worlds and forbidden places. And keep listening, because somewhere in the deep, a story waits to rise again.